The United States produces more oil than any other country in the world. And President Trump talks about it a lot.
Take the oil.
Keep the oil.
Drill, baby, drill.
But he doesn't just talk about America's oil.
We're going to have a presence in Venezuela as it pertains to oil.
So why is he interested in more oil when the US has so much of its own? To understand this, we need to take a deeper look at oil and how it shaped the US and the world. Oil fuels our transport and powers our homes, but it's also used to make plastic, asphalt, and even some lip balms. And to make all those different things requires different types of oil. Let's imagine something more delicious, like chocolate. There are varieties of dark, milk, and white that look, taste, and feel different from one another, even though they're all technically chocolate. Crude oil, the raw material that's pumped out of the ground, is the same. Depending on its density, sulfur content, and ability to flow, oil is classed from light sweet crude on one end to heavy sour on the other.
Overall, we have about 160 plus varieties of crude oil. Different refineries around the world are geared up to process or crack, to use the industry's expression, different grades of crude.
It's easier to refine light crude than heavy, which is thicker. And once that's done, the light is mainly used for products like gasoline and jet fuel, while heavy oil can be used as fuel for ships, material for roads, and lip balm, among many other things. That's generally reflected in the price. Light sweet crude, the blue line on the chart, is worth more than heavy, the red line, and so it's more expensive to buy. And this is key to understanding American oil. In 2025, the US sold 13.4 million barrels a day. But at the same time, it bought nearly 2 million barrels each day from other countries. So why not just keep those extra barrels it produces? It all comes down to light versus heavy. America's oil is 80% light. But most US oil refineries, like these along the Gulf Coast, were built to deal with heavy. That's because most oil available to the US in the 20th century was heavy sour crude oil imported from Latin America and Canada. But in the early 2000s, there was a seismic shift in US oil production. Advances in technology meant light crude oil trapped in shale rocks could now be extracted at scale. This means there's a mismatch between most of the oil America has and the type it can refine.
Once a refinery has been built, it's very difficult to change it, and it requires millions and millions of dollars worth of investment.
It's not worth doing that because, as we saw on this graph, America can sell its light crude for more and buy heavy for less. It makes good economic sense. So let's look at the top 10 countries with the biggest oil reserves. Many are known to extract heavy crude. 3 of them, Venezuela, Iran, and Russia, are currently under sanctions by the United States. Despite this, small amounts of oil from Venezuela have trickled into the US. That's because after Venezuela struck oil, it was mostly American companies that helped set up the industry. And that relationship continued for most of the 20th century, extracting their heavy crude.
Unlike other Latin American countries, Venezuela maintained this positive relationship with the United States. Even during the 1976 nationalization of oil, always positive, and obviously they had highs and lows, but always was a positive relation.
But the turning point was when socialist leader Hugo Chavez came to power in 1999. He asserted state control over the oil industry in particular.
He put tougher conditions on foreign oil companies, and that's what the US government and US oil companies didn't really like.
When Hugo Chavez died in 2013, Nicolás Maduro became president and continued these policies. In 2019, a World Bank tribunal ordered the Venezuelan government to pay compensation to US oil companies, but it wasn't paid. And that's part of what US President Donald Trump is referring to when he says that Venezuela has stolen American oil.
They took our oil rights. We had a lot of oil there. As you know, they threw our companies out, and we want it back.
Venezuela denies these claims. Things escalated between the two countries at the end of 2025 when the US military seized oil tankers and blockaded Venezuelan ports. President Trump said this was to tackle narco-terrorism. On January 3rd, American troops seized the leader of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, and his wife. They took them to the United States to face drug-related charges. Here's some of what President Trump said following that intervention.
We'll have the greatest oil companies in the world go in and invest billions and billions of dollars and take out money, use that money in Venezuela, and the biggest beneficiary are going to be the people of Venezuela.
US and Western sanctions in Venezuela over the last decades have made space for competitors to come in, like Russia, Iran, and particularly China.
China has become a very important trade partner of not just Venezuela, but of most South American countries. And in particular, it's been buying raw materials, oil, copper, soya, all sorts of natural resources.
China has been buying around 90% of Venezuela's oil and is a key trading partner. And it's this sort of influence that the Trump administration wants to stop.
Well, we want safety there. We want to be surrounded by countries that aren't housing all of our enemies all over the world.
When it comes to Venezuela's oil, things aren't going to change quickly. Despite Venezuela having the biggest known reserves, around 303 billion barrels, it exports fewer than 1 million barrels a day. That's because of sanctions and decades of underfunding and mismanagement.
The infrastructure has to be, in some cases, believe it or not, rebuilt from scratch, looking at a 3 to 4 year window before any Venezuelan crude in meaningful volumes happens.
And while there's a push to use more renewable energy in the face of growing climate change concerns, oil still plays a crucial role in the global order.
The oil industry over the last century or so has been an immense source of wealth. It's a multi-trillion-dollar industry which has transformed